Chapter 10. "This is some grade A bullshit," Duke muttered as they sat around the fire eating dinner. "I need a minimum of 9 hours of sleep a night. Anything less and I risk losing muscle mass and gaining fat, and you'd best believe that's the truth. I've got the best personal trainer in Hollywood, and I need to be below 4% body fat for my upcoming movie. It's in the fucking contract, damn it. I spend at least half of the movie without a shirt on. All these pre-made meals have been precisely calorie calculated to work with a minimum of 9 hours of sleep. And if you upset that balance, everything goes out of whack." "I'm sorry, Mr. Redpath, but we have to get up and start hiking at 4 in the morning," Harry said, trying to retain a calm tone, but really feeling like he'd enjoy nothing more than punching the spoiled, narcissistic actor in the face right about now. "This has become a matter of survival. This stupid solar flare crap has fucked everything up," Duke grumbled. "How am I going to do my meditations without my music and my yoga? I need the Buddhist monk chanting to achieve the poses I've been trying to perfect." "Like I said, sir, I'm really sorry, but these are circumstances beyond my control. I couldn't have seen or predicted this. Nobody could have. If you knew there was even a remote possibility of this solar flare crap, then you should have made provision for it," Duke snapped. "Fuck, we're paying you enough to prep for shit like this, aren't we? The reason my agent picked you and your uncle was that you two were supposed to be the best in this fucking business. But now I'm starting to have doubts about that." "Quit your damn complaining for 5 minutes, Duke," Lex suddenly snapped. "Seriously, I'm getting sick of your whining. It's not Harry's fault that this weird solar flare thing happened. And it's what, a 1 in a million kind of event? So how could he be expected to prepare for something like that? You're acting like an arrogant, spoiled brat. Like a whiny adolescent instead of a man in his 40s. It's ridiculous. And it's starting to seriously piss me off." "Oh, that's real rich coming from you, miss," Duke began, sneering contemptuously. "Shut the hell up," Harry roared, jumping to his feet and glaring at Duke with white-hot rage glowing in his eyes. "We've both had enough of your endless whining and complaints. We're all stuck in this situation together, and the only way we're getting out of it is by working together, not bitching and whining relentlessly. I'm so sick of your crap, and so is Lex. Just shut your mouth for a couple of minutes, and let the rest of us eat in peace, please." Duke's male model features contorted, tightening and twisting into an expression of pure fury. "You insignificant little pissant," he hissed through clenched teeth. "You think you can speak to me like that and get away with it? You pathetic, scrawny little fuck. Do you understand who you're talking to? I'll not only make sure your useless tour agency goes under and never works again, I'll make sure you personally are blacklisted from any fucking job outside of scrubbing public fucking toilets. But first, you little weed, I'm going to teach you a little lesson in respect. I'll snap you in half. I'll break your neck. Bring it on, you arrogant prick," Harry snarled, springing to his feet and clenching his fists as he shifted into a boxer's stance. "Stop it, both of you!" Lex screamed, jumping up and positioning herself between the two men to prevent them from coming to blows. "Just stop it! Stop! This is insane. We're all just trying to survive here and get out of this place alive." Harry lowered his fists and forced himself to draw in a deep, calming breath, which he held in his lungs for as long as possible, before exhaling it in a slow sigh. "You're right, Lex. I'm sorry. That was totally out of line." "Why the fuck are you apologizing to her, you piece of shit?" Duke bellowed. "You should be groveling on your knees in front of me and begging for forgiveness." "I don't know what I ever saw in you, Duke," Lex hissed, her beautiful eyes ablaze with disgust and contempt. But your behavior over the last few hours has erased every last piece of attraction I ever felt. You're disgusting. Don't ever touch me again. I was gonna dump you after this abortion of a trip anyway, Duke muttered, although it was plain to see that his fragile ego had been deeply wounded. You're not worthy of me. You're not on my level, Lex. I should have seen that from the beginning. What a waste of my precious time to be with an airheaded bimbo like you. Zero quality, absolutely zero value beyond that pretty face of yours. And you know what else? You're the worst lay I've ever had, and you're truly a disgusting person. Harry growled. You have no right to talk to her like that. Just shut your mouth, Duke. Seriously. Or what, huh? You pathetic loser, thinking you can be a white knight for this vapid bimbo, as if she'd even let a loser like you clean her fucking floors, and... Oh, just shut up, Duke, Lex hissed. You're just making yourself look worse and worse. Oh, I'm going somewhere else. I can't stand to be around your toxic vileness any longer. Lex, wait, Harry said, as she got up and stormed off. There might be bears nearby, and I'd rather deal with an angry bear than with him, she hissed, with daggers in her eyes as she glared at Duke. In fact, if a bear killed me right now, I'd probably be perfectly fine with that as long as it gets me away from him. Without another word, she marched off in a huff, into the shadows beyond the circle of light thrown out by the campfire. Harry shot an icy glower at Duke, and then he hurried off in pursuit of Lex. Bears were a very real danger, and he didn't want her inadvertently stumbling into one in the dark and ending up getting mauled. Lex, wait, he called out behind her as she stormed into the forest. Seriously, it's dangerous out there. He ran through the darkness between the trees and caught up with her, gently gripping her arm to stop her. Please, Lex, come back to camp, he said. I know it's difficult to be around that jerk of a boyfriend of yours. He's not my boyfriend anymore, and he's way worse than a jerk, she countered. There aren't enough insults in the English language to describe how awful he is. I can't believe I was ever attracted to that egotistical, selfish, ignorant asshole. He disgusts me. He absolutely disgusts me. And now I'm stuck out here in the middle of nowhere, hundreds of miles from civilization, trapped with him in this hostile, dangerous place with its bears and wolves and moose, with this solar flare thing that's killed my phone and all my tech and... She burst into tears, sobbing plaintively. For a few moments, Harry had no idea what to do, and he simply stood there awkwardly. But then he figured that it wasn't inappropriate to comfort her during a moment like this. So he gently put his arms around her and hugged her. It's okay, he said soothingly. I mean, I know everything's a mess right now, and I know Duke is making everything way worse than it already is. But don't worry. It's going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right. I'll get you out of here in one piece. I promise you that. Just stick with me and I'll get you out of here. That's a promise. He chose his words carefully, for he couldn't promise to get her back to California. That was a promise that he knew he couldn't keep. In fact, he was almost 99% certain that she wouldn't ever see California again. But he couldn't very well tell her this right now, not when she was so terribly vulnerable. To hear such a thing at this moment could very well break her irreparably, and that was the last thing he needed. Are you sure? She whimpered, sniffling. Can you really promise to get me out of here in one piece? Well, I've got my compass, which is working fine, and that's all I need to navigate my way back to the airplane. And we've got plenty of bear spray in case there's any trouble with wild animals. And failing that, I've got my .357 revolver in case of any serious wildlife emergencies. As long as you stick with me, you'll be perfectly safe. Sniffing and wiping her nose with the back of her hand, in a decidedly unladylike manner, Lex disengaged from the hug. Thank you, Harry, she said, drying her tear-wet cheeks off on her sleeve. You're so kind and gentle and considerate, the exact opposite of that jerk of an ex-boyfriend. If it were just me and him out here, I'd be pretty sure we wouldn't survive for more than a day or two. But at least with you, I feel safe. I trust you. I can trust you, right? You can definitely trust me, Harry said proudly. He couldn't deny feeling immensely attracted to her at this moment, but he knew that such feelings were futile. There was no way a woman like Lex, a famous model who dated A-list celebrities, would ever have any romantic interest in a very normal guy like him. But even though his rational mind told him these things, he was sure the sparkle of attraction he noticed in her eyes was more than just wishful thinking. He wasn't just imagining it, was he? It really did feel like something was there. However, there was no point in dwelling on such things, as enticing and as invigorating as they were to think about. Right now, keeping everyone safe and alive, and getting back to the airplane in one piece was all that mattered. As to what he would do when he got to the plane, and was forced to tell them the truth about the EMP, well, he would cross that bridge when he got to it. Thank you, Harry, she said with sincerity. You're a really great guy. The heat of a blush warmed his cheeks against the chill of the night. Thanks, Lex, and I'd say that you're an amazing girl, but you probably hear that from just about everyone a million times a day. So we'll just leave it at that. Lots of people say that to me, but most of them are trying to get something from me. Coming from you, I feel like it's genuine. So thank you, Harry. I appreciate the compliment. Let's go back to camp, Harry said, overcoming the temptation to be drawn deeper into this enticing conversation with Lex, which, as unbelievable as it was, seemed to be bordering on flirtation. I'm not exaggerating when I talk about the dangers of bears, and I did pick up signs that there were some around this area. All right, let's get back. But please, let's not go anywhere near Duke. Could I maybe sleep in your tent tonight? I'm sorry, I know that's a big request, getting into your personal space. But I can't stand the thought of having to sleep next to that revolting ogre. Not after what he said earlier. The thought of having to sleep in the same tent as him makes me want to vomit. You are more than welcome to sleep in my tent, Harry said. I don't mind setting up my sleeping mat under the stars. My tent is all yours. Oh, I didn't mean that you should, get turfed out of your tent, she said hastily. I wasn't implying that I wanted it for myself. That'd be awfully selfish of me. I know you must think I'm spoiled, that I'm a brat because of, who I am and what I do for a living. But I wouldn't dream of demanding that you sleep out in the cold while I take your tent. It's a two-man tent. I'm pretty skinny. I wouldn't take up much space. I only asked because I was sure we could both fit in it. As intoxicatingly tempting as the idea of sleeping next to this gorgeous young woman was, Harry knew that he had to do the gentlemanly thing. And not just because he didn't want to make it seem like he had any inappropriate desires. He knew that Duke, with his eggshell fragile ego, would explode with wrath if his very recent ex-girlfriend spent the night in his tent. There was already more than enough tension in the camp, and Harry didn't want to create any more of it. Oh, yeah, I know you weren't implying that I should give you my tent, he said, but seriously, it's all yours. I don't mind sleeping under the stars at all. In fact, I really like it. Are you absolutely sure? I feel pretty bad about taking your tent. I'm 100% sure, Lex. Seriously, it's not a problem at all. When they got back to the campsite, Duke was pacing furiously back and forth like a caged animal. Harry bristled, anticipating another heated argument, but the movie star just muttered something under his breath and glared at him and Lex, and then he stormed off to his tent, the tent in which Lex had formerly been sleeping. Lex and Harry heard the sound of rummaging inside the tent, and this was soon followed by Duke tossing all of Lex's bedding and belongings out. I'll help you pick up your stuff, Harry said. No, you better not, Lex said. I mean, I appreciate the offer, of course. You're very kind. But you getting involved will just make him angrier than he already is. We don't need any more tension in this camp. I'll take care of this on my own. Okay, I'll go clear out my tent for you. A short while later, Lex had moved into Harry's tent, while he had set up his sleeping mat and sleeping bag near the main campfire. After she had gone to bed, he walked out to the edge of the camp to urinate, and just as he was unzipping his pants, he saw a sight that froze the blood in his veins and got him rooted to the spot with terror. A huge, terrifying form coming out of the shadows, straight toward him. Chapter 11. Up until a few seconds prior, Vivian had thought she couldn't be any more afraid than she already was, and she was wrong about that. As Anthony's savage men surged with murderous intent toward her building, a truly paralyzing terror seized her. It felt as if her blood had turned to ice in her veins, and every nerve ending had been set aflame. A terrible nausea churned in her guts, and she thought she was going to throw up. All feelings of weakness and illness from the flu she was suffering from were purged from her system in an instant, as a fresh tide of adrenaline gushed through her body. Down below on the street, the thugs opened fire, spraying the entirety of the building with bullets in a thunderous cacophony of wild shooting, aiming primarily for the windows of the apartments. The terrible sound was beyond deafening, and all Vivian could do was curl up in a fetal ball on the floor, covered in broken glass and debris, and clamp her arms over her head in a futile attempt to shield herself from the onslaught. She wasn't sure how long the assault continued. The barrage of gunfire felt as if it had lasted for hours, even though in reality it had gone on for perhaps 10 or 20 seconds. But finally it ceased. This wasn't the end of the attack, though. Now that they were done firing on the building, the men tried to breach the main entrance below. However, the doors held against their bodies, which they slammed viciously into them, and they held fast against the bullets they fired into them. Vivian had always thought that the security of this building had been total overkill, but now she was grateful for the paranoia of whoever had set this place up to be so secure. After what felt like an eternity, the men gave up their assault. The front doors had held, and the windows on the lower floors were all securely barred. "Don't think you're safe from me, you bunch of cowardly motherfuckers," Anthony roared, pointing at the building with a rage-quivering forefinger. "You're all dead. It's only a matter of time. You pieces of shit can't hide out in your little castle forever. We will get in there, I swear to God, and when we do, we're gonna slaughter every last one of you like the filthy pigs you are. Fuck you. Fuck all of you." The fact that there was a reprieve in the assault brought a measure of relief to Vivian, and she slowly removed her arms from her head. She was trembling violently, and her breath came to her in short, sharp gasps, the act of inhaling made more difficult by the virus that had her in its dreadful grip. Although adrenaline was still coursing through her veins, she could already feel it wearing off, and she knew that once its invigorating influence on her system was gone, the crushing fatigue of the flu would return in force. If she was going to do anything, she needed to do it now, while she still had a little energy left. With what felt like a Herculean effort, she dragged herself to her feet. Leaning against the wall for balance, she staggered across the bedroom, the journey of a few yards feeling more like a marathon. Then she hobbled across her living room to the front door. It was locked, but only with the main lock, and she knew that a determined kick or two from a powerful man could smash it open. Her husband had always been a little paranoid about security, though, and had installed 2 deadbolts on the door as extra security measures. He had also upgraded the hinges to more secure ones. With shaking, clammy hands, Vivian locked the 2 deadbolts into place. Now, Almost all the adrenaline seemed to have departed from her system, evaporating with the ephemerality of a morning fog in a hot sunlight. And as she had known it would, the crushing exhaustion of the flu was returning in full force. The journey back to her bedroom was beginning to feel as if it was an impossible undertaking. "The sofa," she croaked. "I'll just lie down there for a while." Using what felt like the final reserves of her strength, she dragged herself across the living room to the sofa and collapsed onto it. A fever now had her in its terrible grip, and alternating flashes of extreme heat and Arctic cold blasted in debilitating waves through her body. One minute she was shivering, her teeth chattering with cold. The next, it felt as if some torturer was dousing her in boiling water. Outside, she heard the sounds of gunfire and screams. But these awful sounds came through her ears distorted, as if they had been filtered through murky water, and she wasn't even certain that she was hearing them. Perhaps she was slipping into a hallucination. Perhaps this whole thing had been a hallucination, a hellish fever dream. At that point, she wasn't even sure she cared anymore. Living and dying were beginning to feel like eerily abstract concepts. A sheer and crushing exhaustion came over her, draped like a blanket of thick lead. Even breathing was now beginning to feel as if it required a tremendous effort. On the wall opposite Vivian was a photo portrait of her and her husband on their wedding day, one of her favorite photographs. Next to it was a family portrait with her children when they were in elementary school, another favorite of hers. "David and Sandra, my babies," she croaked sadly, a tear burning the corner of her reddened eye as it crept out and trickled down her cold cheek. "I don't know if I'll ever see either of you again." A ball of intense emotion tightened in her throat. She wanted to weep, but even crying now felt like it would require an insurmountable effort. She was too exhausted even for that. "And Earl, I miss you so much," she whispered hoarsely, staring at the portrait of her husband. "I've missed you terribly ever since you left, but I think that maybe I'll be seeing you soon, my love. Yes, I think I'll be seeing you soon." She knew now that Emily wasn't coming, but she didn't feel betrayed or let down by her best friend. Emily hadn't reneged on her promise because of carelessness or neglect. Instead, it was clear to Vivian that it had simply become impossible for Emily to get to her. She still didn't know exactly what had happened, but it was obvious that whatever it was had thrown the entire world off its axis. For all she knew, Emily might already be dead. No help would be coming, and there would be no antibiotics for the infection that was growing in her chest. She suddenly understood this, with chilling clarity. "This is it," she murmured sadly. "It's over. It's all over. I don't know if I'll see another sunrise. Even if I do, it'll probably be the last one I ever see. This is it. It's over." Then she closed her eyes and drifted into a fitful slumber, plagued by terrifying nightmares. While outside, the sounds of gunfire, yells, and screams continued throughout the night. Chapter 12. "I knew something like this would happen," murmured Peter, the elderly Native American man, as he warmed his hands by the fire. "I always knew I'd live to see the end of this world. Not the end of the world, but the end of this world. The world the white man created. The artificial world completely cut off from nature and Mother Earth. I knew it couldn't last, and now it's finally come to an end. I'm sad. My heart breaks for all those countless millions who will now suffer and die. But I can't say I'm surprised. It was an act of war that set this off, that caused this, Emily countered. This wasn't, civilization collapsing in on itself under its own weight or something like that. It was a weapon, an attack like a nuclear bomb, launched either by a foreign enemy or a domestic terrorist. You can't blame, civilization for this. Peter smiled and chuckled humorlessly. Are you sure I can't blame your so-called civilization for this? Tell me, what would have happened if this EMP weapon had been used, say, 500 years ago? Would it have done anything? I mean, it hasn't harmed our bodies. It hasn't scorched and poisoned the land like a nuclear bomb would have. So what would it have done if there hadn't been any technology to destroy? I guess it wouldn't have done anything. Exactly. It would have been like a fart in the wind. But now, with everyone's lives so completely disconnected from Mother Earth and from the natural world, with the existence of all these millions and billions of people so completely dependent on all this modern technology, look what's happened. This EMP thing, it's destroyed everything. The vast majority of people know nothing about where their food comes from or even what food is. They cannot live off the land. They cannot live with the land. And now, like parasites whose host has suddenly died, they're about to find out just how terribly risky the whole project of modern civilization was, making everything completely reliant on technology, completely divorced from the natural world that provides the food, the water, the air they breathe, but instead raping and plundering and looting Mother Earth until she has no more left to give. These people are going to find out now just what an awfully precarious position civilization has put them in. Emily didn't quite know how to respond to this. In many ways, he was right. People had become far too dependent on technology for their survival, for their entire existence. But she felt it was unfair to put the blame on everyone for this. After all, the vast majority of people had no choice in this matter, and they didn't know any better. It was like being born and raised in the Matrix. John sensed her discomfort at discussing the situation in terms of this subject, and he steered the conversation in a slightly different direction. Where are you going, Emily? You told us you live on a homestead that has pretty much everything you need to survive this disaster, so why risk your life by going on a journey like this? My best friend is in town, and she's in serious trouble. There's nobody there who can help her. Her life is in my hands, and there's no way I'm going to let her down. John nodded slowly, looking at Emily with a new sense of respect in his eyes. You're a good friend to her, Emily. Many people wouldn't do something like that, even for their own families. She may as well be my family, Emily said. Vivian's been like a sister to me for most of my life. And now that the chips are down, I have to be there for her. I know she'd do the same thing for me if the situation were reversed. Town isn't a place I'd want to be in a time like this, Peter said. People are going to become like wolves, hunting in packs, scavenging for whatever scraps they can get, and preying on the weak. Unlike my people, the white man has always taken great pride in proclaiming how different he is from all other animals in this world. Now he is completely separate from the animal world, as if he is a god, elevated so high above our animal brothers and sisters. But now he will soon find out just how alike all other animals he really is, now that the mask of civilization has fallen from his face. You mark my words, people are going to become like wolves now. No, worse than wolves. For the brother wolf only kills when he must eat and only takes enough to satiate his hunger. But the man wolf, he kills for the sport of it. and his hunger is endless, can never be satisfied. Dark times are ahead. Very dark times are ahead. This is true, Grandfather, John said respectfully, and we appreciate your wise insight. You shouldn't frighten Emily. I don't think that, I don't know. People are going to descend into full-blown murderous rampages and other such savagery just yet. Have a little faith in people. Peter chuckled coldly, and his eyes took on a look as hard as flint in their wrinkled sockets. When you get my age, John, and you've seen the things I've seen, we will see how much faith you have in humanity then. But I'm not entirely pessimistic. Miss Emily here, she represents the good in humanity. And despite everything I've said, I'm not cynical enough to believe that there is no good in humankind. He turned and fixed an intense stare into Emily's eyes. It's a noble thing you're doing, Miss Emily. Please do not take what I've said to mean that I am discouraging you. I do not wish to put you off your quest. I just want you to understand that you are heading into great danger, and you must be very, very cautious. I appreciate the warning, Peter, Emily said, smiling warmly. I genuinely do. Don't you worry, I'm going to be very, very careful. Please do. You're a good person, I can sense that. And truly good people are far and few between these days. And with what's happened, they're likely to become even rarer. Thank you, Emily said. And I can tell you're both good people, too. I'm very grateful for the venison, and my dogs are as well. Tell me, what will you do tomorrow? John looked at Peter and then shrugged. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I guess my old truck's toast now, so we've got a long walk back home. Couple of days, I guess. We'll carry whatever we can without overburdening ourselves. I'll hunt for game to keep us fed along the way, and then when we get back, I guess we'll just survive somehow. What's home for you? She asked. My family has a plot of land outside a small village. There's a good community there. We're all part of the same tribe. I guess we'll just switch back to how my ancestors lived for thousands of years before civilization came along. We've still got the old knowledge. It hasn't all been forgotten. I think you've got a much better shot at surviving, and maybe even thriving, than 99% of other people out there, Emily remarked. But like your grandfather said, a lot of people are going to act like wolves in the days to come. You and your community are going to have to take steps to protect yourselves from the wolves. We will, John said grimly. We'll do whatever it takes to keep our people safe. They chatted a while longer, and then everyone curled up near the fire and went to sleep. Emily said her farewells to the two of them before retiring for the night, because she knew she would have to set off before either of them woke up. She and her dogs only slept a few hours. She set an alarm on her digital watch, another of the few electronic items Lionel had kept safe from the effects of the EMP, with his specially designed Faraday cage, for 4 o'clock in the morning. She felt as if she had barely curled up by the fire and closed her eyes when the little device began its incessant beeping. Groaning and stretching, she killed the alarm and got up in the pre-dawn darkness. The campfire had almost burned out completely, and only a few coals continued to smolder in the middle of the fire pit. John and Peter, meanwhile, were snoring contentedly on the other side of what was left of the fire. Goodbye, Peter and John, she whispered to the sleeping men. I wish you the best in this strange, uncertain, and scary new world we've found ourselves in. She roused her dogs, gave them some special kibble from the sack of it she'd brought along for the journey. And then, when they were done eating, she hooked them up to their harness, got into the buggy, and set off. By that point, the eastern sky was growing lighter by the minute, and the approaching dawn was slowly but surely banishing the darkness from between the trees. As she was rolling away, Emily shot one last glance over her shoulder at the two men. John was sitting up, rubbing his weary eyes, and he waved farewell to her just before she rode out of sight. She waved back and wondered if she'd ever see either of them again. Likely not, she thought, with a pang of sadness. She hoped that against all odds, they would make it in this harsh new world. There was no time to linger on such things, though. She had to focus on the journey now, and on covering as much distance in as short a time as possible. The road would be cool now, and she figured that there wouldn't be a soul on it. The rough surface wouldn't be great for the dog's paws if she kept them on it for long stretches. But she figured that she could do short stretches on it, alternating with short stretches on soft ground, without doing any damage to her precious dog's paws. She and the dog sped onward like this, attaining very decent speeds while on the road, which was entirely devoid of vehicles, abandoned or otherwise, and managing to maintain a pretty good speed, even off-road, on the soft ground of the forest. Aside from a number of wild animals, no bears or moose, thankfully, she didn't see another living soul for hours. The day was a clear one, without a single cloud in the sky. Although Emily loved the sun, she would have preferred this day to be an overcast one, just to keep the temperatures cooler so her dogs could keep going for longer. As it was, though, the day soon started to heat up, and by 9 o'clock, she decided it was time to rest up for a while. She knew the terrain fairly well around this area, due to training here with the dogs quite often in winter, and she knew there was a river coming up. She decided to rest under the low bridge that spanned the river, where the road crossed it. It would provide shelter from the sun and from any unwelcome eyes. The area was relatively flat, and the forested riverbanks were far from steep. It was easy to navigate down to them and to steer the buggy under the bridge, which had a clearance of around 10 feet in most places. The water here was clear and fresh, and while the dogs drank eagerly straight from the river, Emily filled up her special bottle, which had a built-in filter. She slaked her thirst, then found a cool, flat spot in the shade where she could take a nap. Owing to how little sleep she'd had the previous night, she quickly drifted into a restful slumber. She slept for a few hours and restored her strength, but the wake-up she received was far from pleasant. The first thing that clued her into the fact that something was wrong was the sound of her dogs barking like crazy, which was never a pleasant thing to wake up to. The second thing was the sound of a shotgun being cocked, and a harsh male voice growling 5 terrifying words. "Move, and I'll kill you." Chapter 13. "Come on, boy, let's do this thing," Lionel said, handing Jimbo a double helping of doggy treats. "You did good. You did real good." Jimbo wolfed down the treats with gusto, wagging his bushy tail gleefully. Lionel affectionately ruffled Jimbo's fur, staring with pride and wonder at his favorite dog. He still couldn't believe that his improvised crash course in scent tracking training had actually worked. Then again, he had noticed from the time that Jimbo had been a puppy that he'd always been an exceptionally smart dog, so he figured he shouldn't be that surprised. Now that he knew which route his nephew had taken, thanks to Jimbo's keen nose, Lionel was feeling a little more optimistic about the situation. Not terribly optimistic, to be sure, for there was still a forest fire of unknown proportion to contend with, which could quickly become an apocalyptic inferno, considering how dry things had been in recent months. But at least he knew that the search for the 3 travelers wasn't likely to be a needle in the haystack situation, like it would have been had Jimbo not picked up on Harry's scent. "I know you think it's weird hiking at night, boy," Lionel said, as they set off into the woods in the dark, lighting their way with a gas-powered camping lantern. "Believe me, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think it was a serious emergency. But it is a serious emergency. Trust me with that. If I can pick up the scent of smoke on the breeze, your sensitive doggy nose must be smelling it as if the fire's right on top of us already." In response to this, Jimbo let out an enthusiastic bark. He was just happy to be doing an activity with his master. Like most huskies, even though he was starting to get a little older, Jimbo had a seemingly boundless store of energy. "I just hope we don't run into any dangerous critters out there," Lionel said warily. "I'm prepared, of course," he continued, patting the canister of bear spray on his right hip and the revolver on his left. "I would definitely rather not see any of this forest's residents than have to break out either of these two items. I'm sure you agree with that, right, boy?" Jimbo didn't respond. Instead, he stared hungrily at the bag of treats in his master's hand, eager for more. Lionel couldn't help but chuckle. With a warm smile of affection, he opened the bag and dangled a treat enticingly in front of Jimbo's nose. "All right, boy," he said, still grinning. "I can't say you haven't earned a little something extra with your superb performance this evening. But I'm not just going to give this stuff away like candy on Halloween. Let's make sure that you haven't forgotten everything else I taught you." Jimbo's stare remained locked, unwaveringly on the bag of treats. A long, stretchy goop of drool dangled from his mouth. As desperate as he was for a treat, though, he was immensely well-trained and very well-behaved. He sat completely motionless, waiting for his beloved master to hand the treat to him. "Lie down, boy," Lionel commanded. Jimbo immediately complied. "Roll over, boy." Once again, Jimbo obeyed without hesitation. "Stand up, boy." Again, Jimbo did this straight away. "Paw shake." Jimbo obediently extended his right paw, which Lionel took and shook affectionately. All right," Lionel conceded, chuckling warmly. "You've definitely earned it now. Enjoy." He handed Jimbo a treat, which the husky wolfed down. While Jimbo was enjoying his meal, Lionel wrapped the treats in an extra plastic bag he had taken from the Cessna, and he stuffed the tight-wrapped package into one of the side pockets of his backpack. All the food he was carrying with him had been double-wrapped in plastic. He didn't want any scent of food to waft through the forest after dark, because that could very well be tantamount to asking for a mauling, depending on how close any bears were. He and Jimbo set off, moving at a cautiously brisk pace. Despite Lionel's many years of experience in the wilderness, he couldn't help but feel nervous, and a constant feeling of anxiety gnawed at his guts. He knew if there were any dangerous wild animals nearby, Jimbo would likely detect their presence long before he inadvertently stumbled upon one of them. But even so, it was difficult not to feel paranoid. Nonetheless, all he could do was press on. Although he could no longer see the horizon, he reminded himself that the forest fire was huge and very likely spreading rapidly. As if to drive home the importance of this fact, the wind began to pick up, rushing with a susurrus hiss through the trees, although it was cold and crisp. And it carried on it only the pine scent of the forest, intermingled with the odors of dead leaves and pine needles packed in a slowly decaying mass on the forest floor. Lionel knew that soon enough, there would be another distinct smell on the wind. Smoke. With the breeze picking up, the forest fires would surely spread at a dangerously accelerated pace. It didn't take long for them to encounter their first wild animal. Moving just in front of Lionel and staying within the halo of light cast out by the camping lantern, Jimbo abruptly froze, his body stiffening as he paused to sniff the air. Lionel's heart began to thump, and his right hand darted instinctively over to the grip of his revolver. He had to remind himself that bear spray was a far wiser first choice than a gun, even though he knew he would feel far more secure by pointing his .357 at a threat. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, the harsh tone of his voice heavy with urgency. "What have you spotted?" Jimbo raised his hackles and let out a low, threatening growl. Fear and worry began to rip through Lionel's veins in increasingly potent waves. Forcing himself to take out the bear spray instead of his revolver, he gripped the canister tightly in his right hand, keeping his forefinger on the spray button and the nozzle aimed forward. With his left hand, he swept the camping lantern back and forth, straining his eyes in an attempt to visually pierce the threatening veil of darkness that surrounded them. As hard as he tried to see what was out there, the inky darkness of the forest, into which the relatively weak light of the camping lantern could only penetrate so far, allowed whatever was out there to remain hidden. Jimbo began to growl more persistently, and then he let out an explosive series of barks that got Lionel even more worried. A cold bead of sweat inched its way tortuously down Lionel's spine, and his palms grew clammy. "What's out there, damn it?" he murmured through gritted teeth. "Show yourself, whatever you are." A twig snapping to his left, which was the direction in which Jimbo's attention was focused, made Lionel's stomach lurch and got his heart racing even faster. Something was definitely there, and it was just beyond the circle of light. Jimbo began to bark even more frantically, and it sounded like a bark of fear rather than the excited bark of a dog who had spotted prey that he wants to chase. And Lionel didn't like this one bit. He was now certain that whatever was out there, only a few dozen yards away from the sound of that twig breaking, was a threat, and was not something innocuous like a deer. "Show yourself, whatever you are," Lionel muttered, doing his best to steel his nerves. "Show yourself, you son of a bitch. Step into the light, and then you can suck on some of this bear spray." A shape began to materialize out of the darkness as the animal began to advance warily into the circle of light thrown out by the camping lantern. Although Lionel's initial reaction was one of relief, this quickly morphed into one of intense consternation. The shape was not particularly large, but that didn't mean it wasn't a threat. Indeed, the main threat would surely be close behind. "A baby moose," Lionel murmured, as the young moose, the size of a pony, came walking with cautious curiosity toward him and Jimbo. Jimbo barked frantically, but his attention was focused more on the darkness behind the baby moose than on it. "Shit," Lionel murmured, backing up slowly. "Where there's a baby moose, there's sure to be a mama moose close behind it. I sure as hell don't want to be dealing with an angry mama moose right now." The baby moose seemed to be a dim creature. It was entirely unintimidated by Jimbo and seemed intent on investigating this strange two-legged creature, the likes of which it had never seen in its short life. "Get away, damn it!" Lionel snapped. "Get back to your mama, kid, before I'm forced to." At that moment, the mother moose stepped into the circle of light. Jimbo went ballistic with his barking, but as agitated as he was, his training kept him from charging the huge creature. As for the mother moose, however, she saw only one thing: her precious baby walking toward a creature that looked like a wolf. With a bellow of aggression, she broke into a furious charge, thundering toward Jimbo. Lionel didn't hesitate to act. Despite the gush of intense, almost crippling fear that exploded through his system the moment the mother moose charged, he forced himself to remain calm. He aimed a sustained burst of bear spray in the direction of the charging moose and her baby. It took an awful lot of courage and perhaps a little foolhardiness to have faith in something that was literally nothing more than a cloud of mist. Every molecule in Lionel's body was screaming at him to drop everything and run for his life, to sprint blindly away as the 1,000-pound missile of flesh, bone, and terrible rage came hurtling toward him. But he forced himself to stand his ground. He had used bear spray on a number of wild animals in the past, and it had always driven them away, no matter how big and fierce they were. He had just never had to do it at night. The baby felt the effects of the spray first, and it turned and bolted into the night, squealing with terror. The charging mother moose got within 2 yards of Lionel and Jimbo, sprinting straight into the noxious burning cloud, and it stopped her dead, as surely as attempting a few high-powered rifle rounds into her massive form would have. Bellowing with pain, anger, and confusion, as she inhaled a lungful of the horrid substance, she skidded to a halt. Then she abruptly turned around and sprinted off at full tilt, bellowing with agony and confusion. For a few seconds, Lionel remained rooted to the spot, unable to move, his heart booming with such powerful thumps in his chest that it felt as if it were about to smash through his rib cage. Everything seemed to have taken on the surreal atmosphere of a dream. Finally, though, he managed to snap himself out of this trance, catching a whiff of the burning cloud of bear spray that continued to linger in the air certainly helped with this. "Oh my God," he murmured. "That was intense. That was seriously intense." He and Jimbo hurried away from the area before the bear spray got into their eyes and noses, too. "Whew, that was a close call, boy," Lionel said, his pulse still well above its usual resting rate, many minutes after the encounter with the moose. "For a minute there, I really thought we were goners. Praise the Lord for bear spray, huh? Never ever leave home without it." Although he was relieved to have survived the encounter, he couldn't help but remain on edge, for he knew that there were many more dangers in the dark forest. And what was more, a latent feeling of dread was percolating with a distinct sensation of discomfort in his belly. He couldn't shake the fear that something far worse than being charged by a moose, which was already terrifying enough, was lying in wait for them. And it wasn't just the very real threat of the spreading forest fires. There was something else that he was dreading, something that felt like it was far closer than he would have liked. "I don't know what's wrong, boy," Lionel muttered to Jimbo, "but I can sense it. Something's off. I've just got that feeling. And I know it's not just the aftershock of that frightening encounter we just had with the moose." Eerily, just as Lionel said this, Jimbo stopped abruptly in his tracks and raised his nose up to sniff suspiciously at the air. The wind was picking up, and the ceaseless hissing sound it made as it whipped through the trees served to cover the many other sounds of the forest, which for someone who was trying to stay alert to any signs of danger was not a particularly good thing. The steady howl of the wind could not conceal one sound in particular, though, and it was a sound that chilled the blood of both man and dog. A wolf howl. It wasn't exactly the sort of sound that one did not expect to hear in a place like this. But it wasn't the fact that it was there that made Lionel worried. It was the proximity of the sound. The wolf that had just howled was not far away, many distant miles off in the woods. Instead, it sounded as if it was worryingly close. Indeed, it had to be, for its howl to have been heard over the noise of the wind. Before Lionel could act, or even really think, the first wolf's howl was echoed by another wolf, which sounded even closer than the first one. This, in turn, was followed by another howl, which came from behind them, and which was also rather close. It seemed like there was a large pack in the vicinity, and they appeared to be on the hunt. And, Lionel suspected worryingly, he felt as if he knew what their prey was. Or rather, who. Him and Jimbo. Chapter 14. For a second or two, Emily froze, rooted to the spot, as panic exploded through her like a hand grenade that had just been detonated in her belly. Was this reality? Or was it some terrible nightmare that she just needed to pinch herself to wake up from? She could have kicked herself. She'd left both firearms on the buggy, not thinking that there would be any danger in taking a short nap here under the bridge. As it had turned out, though, this had proven to be a terrible mistake. She prayed it would not be a fatal one. Slowly, she looked up at the man who had just threatened her. Her dogs were barking like crazy. But although they had formed up in a pack, bristling with aggression against this intruder who was threatening their matriarch, they were too well trained to attack. Nonetheless, Emily felt a measure of relief that they had her back. The man was a large, portly fellow who looked to be in his mid-40s. His face was haggard and pale. His thinning hair was messy and tangled, and his eyes were bloodshot, with big, dark bags under them. And his chubby jowls were covered in a thick coating of salt and pepper stubble. It looked as if he hadn't had a wink of sleep all night. Emily's first thought was that he was perhaps a deranged meth head or some other sort of addict who had been up for days on a drug binge. However, after taking in the sight of him, she decided that this was not the case, unless he had only very recently started using drugs. Firstly, he was dressed in clean clothes. Well, clean aside from a few fresh muddy stains on his pants and mud all over his shoes. And secondly, his teeth appeared to be in a perfectly healthy condition. Also, they were currently many miles away from any sort of settlement. No meth head or other addict would be wandering around the wilderness like this. "I'm not going to move, don't worry," she said, trying to sound calm. The shakiness of her voice, however, betrayed the cold fear that was oozing like melting ice through her veins. "But you need to tell me what you want and why you're doing this." "I want to know what happened," he growled, pointing the shotgun unwaveringly at her face. "And you clearly know something with this fucked up dog sled thing you've got going on. You know who they are and why they've done this. Maybe you're even fucking working for them, huh? Well, you devil-worshipping psychopathic bitch, your forked tongue isn't going to fool me. Tell me lies and I'll blow you straight back to wherever foul pit in hell you crawled out of." Now Emily began to realize exactly who, or rather what, this scary individual was. And the conclusion she came to worried her just as much as if he'd been a meth head. He was clearly some sort of unhinged conspiracy theory lunatic. Lord knew what he was doing on his way out here in the middle of nowhere. But this was what the evidence was pointing to. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know who or what you think I am, but—" "Shut up!" he roared, wild-eyed, stepping closer to her, brandishing his shotgun aggressively. "And make those damn dogs quiet, they're yipping too. It's pissing me off. You don't want to piss me off, you fork-tongued demon. You do not want to piss me off." "Look, if you'll just take a few steps back and lower your weapon, my dogs will calm down," Emily said. "At the moment, you're very obviously threatening me, and my dogs are extremely protective. As you can see, there are a lot of them. And while you might be able to shoot 2 or 3 before the rest of the pack drag you down like a pack of wolves bringing down an elk, you won't survive if I order them to attack, which I will if you keep threatening me. Let's talk things over like reasonable people, shall we? I'm not asking you to give up your weapon. Just take a few paces back and stop being so aggressive." "I'll blow you away before you can command your devil dogs to attack," the man snarled stubbornly. "I'll do it, you she-devil. I swear to God I'll pull this trigger if you don't start giving me some answers." "How can I give you any answers when I don't even know what the questions are? You haven't asked me a single question, yet you're demanding answers. I can't give you answers if I don't know what you're asking, sir." Emily was quite amazed at her ability to remain calm in this situation. Although she had initially felt completely paralyzed with fear, once she had started talking, the intensity of the terror that had gripped her in its razor-sharp talons began to dissipate, leaving in its wake an eerie sense of calm. It was almost, she mused, as if the man was an angry dog she was trying to calm down. "You know what happened," he yelled. "You're one of them. One of the ones who did this." "Are you talking about the EMP event, sir? Look, I can tell you all about that, if that's what you mean. But you have to give me some room and back up a little. My dogs are well trained, but that doesn't mean they won't spontaneously attack if they think the situation is urgent enough. Once one of them breaks ranks and attacks, the rest of the pack will follow. I'm sure you don't want your life to end here, under this bridge, being torn apart and eaten alive by a pack of dogs, right? A look of uncertainty came over the man's haggard face, and for a moment, he didn't seem to know what to say. He clearly didn't want to concede or give up any ground, but it was also obvious that he was becoming increasingly afraid of the dogs, who, as Emily had just warned, were on the verge of breaking ranks and attacking him. Please, sir, for your sake and mine, just take a few steps back and stop being so threatening, Emily pleaded. I don't have any weapons on me. You can surely see quite plainly that my guns are on my buggy. Although he was clearly reluctant to do so, the man gave in and backed off, lowering his shotgun but keeping a tight grip on it, ready to whip it up again in an instant if necessary. What the fuck are you talking about, EMP event, huh? What's that supposed to mean? He demanded. I'm guessing you're out here because your vehicle died on the road somewhere nearby around dusk last night, right? And your phone's dead too, as is every other item of technology you had on you when your car rolled to a lifeless halt, right? It's the end of days, he muttered. The Cabal did this with their powers. It wasn't some shadowy secret society who unleashed this upon the world, sir, Emily said calmly. And it sure as hell has nothing to do with any sort of supernatural powers. It's physics, nothing more, nothing less. You're lying. You're one of them. You worship the devil just like the rest of your evil masters. I know. I know what you people. I'm a Christian, and I say that sincerely, Emily said. She slowly reached inside her shirt and pulled out the gold crucifix she always wore on a necklace around her neck. See? Listen. I know it must seem like some supernatural force has been unleashed on the world, considering the immensity of what happened. But you have to believe me when I say it's nothing more than science, the same way the atomic bomb is just science. Although to the unwitting residents of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it surely must have seemed like some sort of supernatural wrath unleashed on them when we dropped those bombs on them back in World War II. Science? What's science? He demanded. I'm not a fucking moron. I know what a nuclear bomb can do, and it's nothing like what happened. No weapon exists that can do what's been done. That ain't science, it's science fiction. Up until very recently, a weapon with the capabilities of an EMP must surely have seemed like science fiction. But I promise you, the technology to make and deploy such a weapon has been here for a good few years now. Americans certainly possess the capabilities to construct and deploy one, and you can bet your ass that our foreign enemies have the exact same capabilities. It could very well be one of our major foreign foes who did this. Don't be surprised if in the coming weeks and days you see foreign troops landing on our shores. I don't understand, the man said, now more confused than enraged, which Emily took as a hopeful sign. EMP, what does that even mean? How could one weapon do so much damage without so much as a single explosion? Thankfully, she and Lionel had discussed the physics behind EMP weapons on many occasions. Although she had been a biology teacher at high school back before she had retired early, Emily had always had a keen interest in science and physics, too, which Lionel, as a pilot and someone who had trained as an engineer, also shared. Thus, she was now able to explain quite clearly to this aggressive, disturbed stranger exactly what an EMP weapon was, how it had likely been deployed, and what effects it would have. She explained everything in a calm, concise, and easy-to-understand manner. The man listened, dumbfounded, and quietly took it all in. She could tell that although he had initially been extremely skeptical about what she was saying, the more she spoke, the more he began to accept that there was indeed a scientific explanation behind what had happened, and that it wasn't some sort of supernatural attack on the world. So, all our tech is dead. Dead gone, forever, just like that, he eventually asked. I'm afraid so,